Hello everyone. Okay, I hope we're all having a wonderful day. This video is mainly for those groups who I'm not going to see physically to discuss the Electoral College and its pros and its cons. So I think it's going to end up being a quarter of you all. But again, for those people who were in the lessons and want to go over it again, then obviously stay tuned. So the Electoral College, what we looked at last lesson, so this is the means by which presidents get elected. The founding fathers did not fully trust the people to choose a presidential candidate. They also felt that the states each had different worth due to their population size. And so because of these two things, they came up with the Electoral College. Now, there are certain advantages and certain disadvantages of the Electoral College, and this is quite a popular type of exam type of question, evaluate the view that the Electoral College is not fit for purpose or something like that. It can also be a major part of a broader question, like evaluate the view that the elections of US presidents have got more faults than advantages. I can't think of the exact phrase, but something of that nature. Because you can expand it out and say, well, the Electoral College, there's also money, which is really important, and various other things. But again, the Electoral College will probably play quite a big role in that type of essay. So just very quickly, if it was a question like, the advantages versus the disadvantages of the Electoral College, some of the key points you should have got from your reading and doing stuff from the Bennett book are things like this. So firstly, the Electoral College creates the swing states. It creates certain states being more important electorally than others, and this is because those states happen to have a greater diversity of population, and a combination of that and a lot of Electoral College votes. So, for example, Florida has lots of Electoral College points, and it happens to have a number of Democrats, a number of Republicans in it. States like Ohio are similar, Pennsylvania, Michigan, and then there are a number of kind of middle-sized states which also fit into that category. And so it also creates these swing states, but also, of course, creates these electoral deserts where one party always wins, or there's not many Electoral College votes for those particular states. So no one really ever really campaigns in them. I don't know the last time anyone seriously campaigned in Wyoming or North Dakota or anywhere like that. Now, you could say this is the Electoral College's fault. You could also say it's partly the voters' fault, because obviously, the voters of Wyoming, they could have a bigger say if they suddenly started, become a bit more centralist, and, a significant number of them switching to the Democrats, and therefore making it more of a fight in their states. So it's not just the Electoral College's fault, although it does tend to create these swing states and all that stuff we discussed that before about how democratic is this, when lots of states get ignored. Other arguments are things like, well, the Electoral College is in need of reform because it distorts the results. So again, you've got the various statistics in the Bennett book, but candidates can only just win in terms of the popular vote, just to get a couple percent more than their nearest rival, but then win a huge number of Electoral College votes just because of the states in which they've happened to have won in. So again, the textbook has the examples. I don't have it to hand, but things like Obama, for example, got 53% of the vote. I can't remember what percent of the Electoral College he got. It was about 70% or 68% or something like that. And of course, sometimes, this is a really crucial point, the winner of the popular vote might not win in the Electoral College. So Hillary Clinton, for example, got just under 3 million more votes than Donald Trump. So if there'd been an election across the entire country with no Electoral College, she would now be the first female president. But as we know, she didn't win the Electoral College. She didn't win enough of those votes in Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin. So she stacked up votes in her safe states like, California, and other safe states of the Democrats, Connecticut and places like that, New York. But then she didn't get enough in those very close states. So again, it doesn't happen all the time, this, but it does happen from time to time. So year 2000 was another occasion where Al Gore gained more votes than George W. Bush, but he didn't actually win the election because he didn't win the Electoral College. Your counterpoint, of course, this would be, well, it doesn't happen very often. You could also, suppose, make the point, well, all the candidates know about the Electoral College. It's not like it's a new thing. And Hillary Clinton should have been more aware of her votes perhaps not being as strong as they could have been in Michigan, Pennsylvania and Wisconsin, and therefore perhaps campaigned a bit in those states. So there are those sorts of arguments. You also get arguments to say that it's unfair to third parties. Third parties do really badly. It's just aimed at, and it creates this big two-party system. The system's dominated by Democrats and Republicans anyway. The last time a third party got serious number of votes was Ross Perot in 1992. He got about 18% of the vote. He was a billionaire. He self-financed 18% of the vote, but he got 0 electoral college votes. And the reason was his vote was spread out across the states, but wasn't enough to win a majority in any state. Again, it's a bit like those arguments on first past the post in Britain about how parties like the Liberal Democrats or the Greens get a certain percent of the vote nationwide, but their vote is too spread out and therefore they don't win seats. The only time a third party recently, I say recently, since 1968 I think it was, gained electoral college votes was Wallace in 1968, where he gained 45 electoral college votes. He stood as a segregationist, supported the Jim Crow laws against civil rights. He gained enough votes to win a number of states in the South, mainly places like Mississippi and places like that. Okay, we didn't win it. We didn't get a very high percent nationally. So again, it's unfair to third parties. It rewards the two big parties, creates the two-party system. A counterpoint to that would be that's not entirely a bad thing. The American election for the president is electing the president, obviously, and he's not just head of government, he's head of state. And therefore, you might argue it's probably preferable for the head of state to have more than half the votes, because he's got to represent the country in terms of crisis or, in terms of threats, etc., etc. So it might be seen as being preferable that the president has more than half the votes because he is head of state. Can he really do that job? He only has 33% of the vote or something if you have a lot more candidates gaining votes. So there's some of the arguments for and against. Of course, another one against is these rogue voters. So not in all states, but in many states, the electors, they can actually not always vote for the winner. So what they tend to say, the Democrats win in California, 55 electoral college votes. The Democrats then choose who the 55 electors are for the state of California, and obviously they'll choose party bigwigs in the state of California. They might choose some of the party leadership, for example, in California to be their electors. Now, in many states, they have to vote the way the states voted. So if California votes Democrat, the 55 have got to vote Democrat. But in some states they don't, and what you sometimes get is you might get an elector or two who might decide actually, although they've been instructed to vote for the winning candidate of their state, actually they don't like that winning candidate, or they want to make some kind of protest, or they might just make a mistake and they'll vote for somebody else. In 2016, there are a number of these rogue voters who didn't vote for Clinton or Trump. I think Bernie Sanders got a few votes from one or two obviously disaffected Democrat electors. Donald Trump didn't get all the votes he should have got from Republican states because one or two of their electors supported somebody else or spoilt their papers or whatever. And you could say this is really undemocratic. I mean, it's bad enough, isn't it? The fact that, it's first past the post in each of these states, and therefore these electors all come from the same party. I mean, for example, 40% of California normally votes Republican, yet they get no electors from California. You might say, oh, that's bad enough, but on top of that, the fact one of these electors could just on a whim decide, actually, I'm going to ignore my state, I'm going to ignore who it voted for, and I'm personally going to put my vote in for this person, is really undemocratic. They're not accountable for this, although I suppose they will never be chosen again to be an elector. On the counterpoint, to say, what's the weakness of this argument, is this idea, well, actually, they've never actually altered the results. So, you do get some electors in every election who sometimes go one way or the other, but they've never actually changed the result. There've never actually been enough of them to, deny someone winning or losing. Now, that's all well and good, but, the fact it's never happened doesn't mean it won't happen. The fact the system allows this to happen, allows this possibility, is in itself a bad thing. So there are some of the arguments swirling round about the arguments for and against the Electoral College. There are quite a few stats and stuff in the Bennett book which you'll need to know to use in those sorts of essays. In terms of reforming the Electoral College, there's a table in your booklet about what you need to do to reform the Electoral College, and there's various reforms mentioned. Again, they're all kind of explained in the Bennett book. Two states, Maine and Nebraska, don't have a winner-take-all for the Electoral College in their states. What they do, if we take the state of Maine, they've got 4 electors, so they've got 2 congressional districts, and then they've got, the other 2, which are kind of the Senate ones, aren't they? What they do, if a candidate wins overall in Maine, and they win one of the congressional districts, but they don't get the majority in the second one. So say, for example, I got 53% of the vote in Maine, District 1 I got 55% of the vote, and District 2 I got 48%, and my opponent got, 50 or whatever, then I would get 3 Electoral College votes, 2 because I won the entire state, and 1 for the congressional district which I won, and then my opponent would get 1 for the congressional district he won. So Maine and Nebraska do that system, and so there's been suggestions that they should do the whole thing like that, but there's been lots of calculations done to say it would actually make it even less kind of proportionate. I always doubt those things a little bit, because I always think, well, if the voters know it's going to be done in a slightly different way, then I think that changes their voting patterns a little tiny bit. Anyway, so look at the Bennett book and do the table on the proposed reforms. I don't think there'll be a question on the reforms, but it's worth just knowing what they are, because again, it helps you highlight and makes you think about some of the problems with the Electoral College. Any problems with that, then, as ever, please do let me know.